Okay kids, today we're doing the X19 Fiat and or Bertone. I consider it one of the great designs of all time. It started out in 1969 with a show car from the studios of Bertone called the Auto Bianchi Runabout. It was actually styled by Marcello Gandini, the same guy who did the Miura, the Countach, the Ghibli. He also is the same guy who did the Stratos by Lancia. Lancia is kind of a X19 on steroids. And from that it evolved into the Fiat X19. They used the front engine and front wheel drive components from the Fiat 128. So they cleverly put the transverse engine from the front wheel drive 128 behind the seats of this car to make it a mid-engine. Although it was not the first mid-engine car, the Lotus Europa had already come on to the market, and the Porsche 914 or VW Porsche also was being sold at the time. Apparently Bertone's initial plan was to make it sort of a low-volume production car, but when Fiat saw the renderings they said, ooh, there's money to be made here, we're going to mass-produce this, and thus became the Fiat X19, and it was used to replace the aging 850 Spider, also a Bertone design, but that one was done by Giugiaro. Now, despite the fact that they are building the X19, they continued with the 124 Sport, so they built both sports cars concurrently. The X19 name comes from the prototype codes. X1 means it was a passenger car because X2 were trucks or something like that, and it was the 9th car, so it was the X19, and they just kept that nomenclature. And it was first released as a production car in 1972 in Europe. The body was built by Bertone and shipped to Fiat for the mechanical component installation. When it was undergoing design, the U.S. was known to be planning to up its safety regulations and start crash testing. So they built this as a very strong chassis. Unfortunately, that meant it was a little heavy, but apparently it's pretty good in a crash. The initial cars came with the 128 engine, which was 1290 cc's with a whopping 75 horsepower. There's a single overhead cam engine, carburation, had aluminum head and a rubber timing belt, 4-speed gearbox, and very tiny bumpers. In 1975, the US cars got 5-mile-per-hour impact bumpers, which are called the ladder style, and also got an anti-smog engine with modifications including the dreaded air pump, so the power dropped to a whopping 63 horsepower. In 1979 they upped the displacement to 1498 cc's using the engine from the Strada, also known as the Ritmo. It also got the new bumpers, sort of like what you see here. New dashboard, new console, new grille, and they improved the notoriously bad wheel bearings. And the next year they added the Bosch L-Jetronic fuel injection, which increased the horsepower to somewhere between 75 and 85. Now the original 128 engine had a 0 to 60 time of 13 seconds. With the increased displacement and the fuel injection, they dropped it to 10.5, which is still not exactly quick. 1952, Fiat gave up on the U.S. market, so Malcolm Bricklin decided to import the car as a Bertone. So the Bertone factory actually took over the entire manufacture of the car. They did improve the rust protection, but they also started doing two-tone paint, which I'm not a fan of. And total production ended in 1989. Total production of X19s of all types were 200,000, which is pretty impressive. There were 150,000 in the Fiat name and 50,000 in the Bertone name. One of the things that amazes me about this car is it's not the world's biggest car, but the efficiency of space use is phenomenal. You get a huge front trunk. It's just got a battery up there, and that's really about it, and a little shroud for the radiator. You get a pretty damn big back trunk. It's like criminy. They stuff the engine in between, and the engine access isn't all that bad. And then behind the passenger seat is the spare tire, full size, and they stuff the gas tank behind the driver's seat. Just an amazing design. Now the wheels are not the most attractive thing. They're called Tron. Apparently they're actually called Chromadora CD179 wheels, but they're known as Trons because they have that Tron look about them. They came out in 1984. X19s were raced. Dallara did one in the World Championship for makes with a 16-valve head and numerous other mods. Of course, there were also body kits available with flared fenders, snorkels on the back engine cover, all sorts of things. The weight distribution is 41% front, 59% rear, which sounds not particularly good, but it makes for very light steering and it really handles very well. It's a very tossable car, just not a whole lot of power. The brakes are manual, the steering is manual. Problems with the car, well, they do tend to have electrical gremlins, especially due to bad grounds. The radiator can be prone to clogging, and if so, the temperature rises and you lose your cylinder head gasket. One of the biggies is rust. The body, bottoms of the doors, rear suspension towers, corners in the rear trunk, around the windshield. It can be a real problem, and believe me, I took a lot of rust off this car when I redid it. The other problem with the body kits is if you put wide wheels on, apparently it can really eat up the wheel bearings. So this is a dashboard from the second generation model. The only thing truly bizarre about it is the tachometer swings counterclockwise, believe it or not. But you get full gauges, the ammeter, temperature, speedo, fuel, and the aforementioned tachometer. The fuses are up under the dashboard on the passenger side. 5-speed gearbox in the later models, which this is. Very light clutch, very easy to shift. And because of the short wheelbase, you have the tire kind of impinging in the wheel well. So the pedals are pretty tightly spaced, but not too bad. You just can't wear huge shoes, and you probably couldn't drive it if you were a basketball player. So, how hard is it to drop the target top? It's amazingly easy and efficient. done.